The Gift of Winter is a 1974 winter Christmas-inspired kids special that's pretty much fallen through the cracks of time at this point. Hell, I only found out about it because whilst doing some research on the 1978 Halloween special Witch's Night Out, I stumbled on this one in the related filmography of the director and writer for this, John Leach. And having realised that it was pretty much a prequel, and having absolutely loved Witch's Night Out, well, that and what with Mill Creek Entertainment very kindly having put this out on DVD relatively recently, I was more than happy to take the plunge on this one and get it ordered up. This was once again almost entirely helmed by John Leach and Isabel Rankin. And once again, this was allegedly based off a book written by Leach himself. Though quite honestly, I'll be damned if I can find anything about his publishings online. So either his works haven't been reissued in a long time, or he never really published a tremendous amount to begin with. Leach at this point is now also operating under the name Jonathan Rogers, which only further works to both muddy the waters and make looking up any information about him online tremendously difficult. Though somehow not as difficult as Rankin, who somehow managed to fall even further off the map than Rogers. Apart from an IMDb listing and a couple of one-line mentions on archived publications online, I can find absolutely nothing more than I could find in my Witch's Night Out review on her. Equally as mentioned in my last review covering these guys, this and Witches are pretty much the only thing that Rogers and Rankin worked on for TV. And while Witches had the benefit of about 4 years worth of additional technology, additional funding, and something resembling a budget for animation costs, this? Well, let's just say we're taking a pretty measured step back into the broom cupboard here. Once again we arrive back in the town, home to Small and Tender, two wonderful little kids who are pretty much what their names suggest. This time, however, the town is in a mild crisis as the local adults are thoroughly fed up. You see, winter here means long, cold, dark nights with terrifically harsh conditions. And when the adults stop to realise that this means that the kids in town can't go out to play or have fun in any way, they launch an expedition to find the Ministry for Winter and lodge a formal complaint, promising to return back in time for Christmas Eve. Quite responsibly, the adults make it very clear that Small and Tender are to stay at home, and both you and me here know exactly how likely that is to happen. And thus the journey begins to complain to Winter, with Small and Tender fleetingly in tow, and hopefully get the bureaucrats that run this time of year to finally pull their finger out and do something for the good of the people. Huh? As I mentioned earlier, I kind of had quite high hopes for this one based on my experience with Witch's Night Out, and in many ways I didn't come away from this disappointed. I'll get the biggest problem and the elephant in the room, if I'm being honest, out of the way right off the bat. The animation here, while occasionally quite charming, is frankly a mess. It looks like the first stage of early animatics most of the time, and all of the characters look like rough sketches. So much so that you can still see the pencil lines, and there's pretty much little to no animation attempted in trying to match up the audio to the mouth movements. There's very rarely even mouth movements, quite frankly. Honestly, even though I know this was broadcast, it looks like the kind of thing that some filmmaker would keep in their archive for years and bring out as an example of the early draft of some great long-lost classic. I found myself at multiple points watching this thinking to myself, gee, it'd be nice to see the final version of this, before having to remind myself that this was the final version of this. I am, however, delighted to say that if you can overlook the animation with this one, what you'll find is a frankly delightful little Christmas special. And furthermore, that if you enjoyed watching Witch's Night Out, you'll be in pretty familiar territory. Most of the gang who are in the sequel are back here, and while some of them are quite different from how they act in Witch's Night Out, Bazooey in particular has gone from a somewhat measured and reasonable young adult to literally a character who bounces off the floor and ceiling making zip-zop bim-bam-boom noises, is a little less defined here. Everyone else seems pretty much in line and in check with everything I've seen before. The whole special seems a click more abstract than Witches as well. Those lovely and detailed backdrops that kind of added an inkling of humanity are instead here globulous, blob-like and, well, abstract. There are some additional characters here at the Ministry of Winter who reminded me very heavily of the art style for The Wall. And the whole thing just feels a lot more fluid. I know that I'm back-referencing to Witches quite a lot here, but the honest answer to that is that, well, there isn't really a lot out there with which I can relate this film to. As I say, the filmmakers on this only really made Witch's Night Out, and that's it. And considering that this is a prequel and that I can't really think of anything that looks even remotely like this, it's the only thing I can even remotely connect it to in terms of a visual comparison. The script is pretty much this movie's saving grace. What you have here is a really tight, well-written, well-acted, broad story about how judging a book by its cover can lead to people becoming bitter and resentful towards the world, and that you should always treat people how you would like to be treated yourself, and try and help people to be the best that they can be. It's a really sweet message that kind of goes above and beyond the standard Christmas remit. But because they set this film at winter, around Christmas time, it makes the message all the more powerful. The closing moments of the special genuinely gave me a warm fuzzy feeling that stayed with me for a couple of days thereafter. The dialogue is also more than competent and has some lovely lines in it. There's a few more subtle tones in the scripting that'll give the adults a bit of a smirk while sailing right over the heads of the young uns, and there's some downright silly lines that'll be sure to raise a giggle from the kids. Only working to enhance the script even further, the voice acting is equally wonderful, with Gilda Radner and Dan Aykroyd lending some wonderful vocal talents to this production throughout. Valerie Bromfield and Jerry Salzberg are also fantastic as Small and Tender. I don't know how they do it, but they're somehow able to really get a kid's speech pattern and mannerism down throughout this. They're a little nasally, but ultimately very believable and charming, which I think with a film like this was kind of essential, because if the kids in this had been obnoxious, irritating or boring, I think this film would have fallen flat on its face. One of the things that I really admire about both this film and Witches is that they simultaneously don't dumb down the adults while equally making fun of the societal constructs that make adults do stupid things. Most of the adults, Bazooey aside in this, are relatively forward-thinking, intelligent, abstract beings. But because we live in a society that favours democracy, broad thinking and committee decision-making, it more often than not leads to the adults in these films getting very heavily distracted and more often than not making really stupid decisions that the kids are clearly very aware of. Which I think is some really quite deep writing for a 30-minute short on how snow was originally created. I'm going to be kind here and say that the direction is of its time. It's not the sharpest work I've ever seen, being honest. I can run off a list of dozens of animations that have done a better job, and once again, when compared to Witches, there's a clear winner. But Witches did what it did with 4 years of cinematic development to work with, and because of that, The Gift of Winter does rather come across as a little bit clunky when compared to most other works of the time. It could be better. It could be worse. There are some clearly inspired moves to more heavily stylise the film, and while it can be said that some elements of the animation are reasonably interesting to look at, Equally, there are moments that are a little too minimalist for my liking. This one isn't going to win any awards for looking pretty, put it that way. And the script in that regard only exacerbates things further, really, by making it very clear that most of the landscape through this 30-minute feature should be filled with browns, blacks and greys. On a final note, the soundtrack's just not that good. There are way too many holes in the sound construction, which is problematic, and the score's fairly uninspiring. Whereas in future efforts the sound design would play key influence in giving life to the feature, here, other than the opening track, it's all a bit lifeless. It's largely farting synthesizers and drone noise. A fairly flat affair, really. There's the odd exception, but otherwise, it's really not worth your time in that area. The Gift of Winter was released on DVD by Mill Creek Entertainment in 2014. And previously, as far as I can tell, this was released on VHS in 1987, though that was a fairly low-budget release. The DVD is packed with extras, including a making of and 10 public domain short cartoons, and it currently retails for about $5 or roughly £3 to £4 on Amazon. For that, I'd say it was a steal, especially if you already have Witch's Night Out and want to complete the set. It's a pretty competent remaster with no flaws that I could see really, and nothing jumps to mind in terms of issues when I think about it. It's just a really solid little package. The only thing I could complain about is that while Mill Creek is normally pretty good with its region coding, and most of the sets that I have off them are region free, both this and Witch's Night Out are region locked. Which is a shame, because as a Brit I'd love to be able to sit down and pop either of these in when the mood hit me. I feel like I've watched Leach and Rankin's two films in the wrong order, in all honesty. I think had I seen and heard of this one before Witch's Night Out, that I'd probably have been much more favourable of it. But because I watched them the other way round, I can't help but feel that this is a little bit inferior. The animation is frankly just unescapable. Really, it's not good. It has its moments, but it's pretty poor. However, one hell of a good script and some alright moments on the direction front did just about save this one for me. And I really feel like I can't emphasise enough just how good that script is. I'm not really one to suggest the Lucas treatment very often, but I think if they went back to the original source audio, updated the animation and gave the soundtrack a little bit of a boost, this would probably be a fantastic little special. Though, as it is, while it isn't perfect, it does have a charm in its own right. It tries to hit all the right notes, and it does so in a way that leaves you bustling with Christmas spirit and would barely leave a dry eye in the house. The film's message really is a reflection of the uniqueness that the film itself carries. It's fun to laugh, it's good to cry, it's ever so good to be me. It's a film that is what it is, and it's happy being just that. If you can appreciate it on its own terms, I can't see you struggling with this one.